Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the latest of the isolation series for those of us all around the world in lockdown. One of our pop-up webcasts. It's 30 minutes of hopefully some thought-provoking ideas. And today we're talking about the 5 key credit, collections, receivables, crisis practices. Focus on order to cash. My name is Dan French. I'm founder and CEO at Consider Solutions, and I know many of you, and thanks for joining us. I'm very pleased to welcome Mark Harrison, who's the founder of the Association of Credit for Central and Eastern Europe, AC. Welcome, Mark.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody.
And Mark's going to share some of his experience and that of AC on the 5 keys to the crisis. So in terms of introduction, many of you know me and us at Consider Solutions. We tend to focus on these topics on our left, helping drive this world-class aspiration, driving better business results, reducing the cost of finance and operations, optimizing cash flow, and having better risk management, and dealing with these pillars on the right about how we deliver that, whether it's control and compliance, risk management, or process execution and transformation itself. But in these strange times, you realize there's more to business than that. So those 4 key themes may not be enough. World-class probably also means agility, strength, speed, responsibility, and care. And we're seeing that a lot right now. So these strange times do kind of influence also your thinking about business itself. It certainly is my view. We have a lot of global influences that kind of encourage us to challenge a lot of received wisdom and to focus on these ideas around practice leadership. And these are some of them, and some of you are on the call today, so welcome, and it's good to see you again. The agenda is this. I'm going to give you a little bit of introduction objectives, talk a bit about the current times. We can't have any conversation without continuing to remind ourselves we're in the most surreal of times. And then I'm going to hand over to Mark to talk about these 5 keys for the crisis in order to cash and credit. And I'm going to finish off with some thoughts for the road and some Q&A. Now, this is a 30-minute session. We've determined with these to keep them quite crisp to that time. I know you're all very busy, but if you do have any questions as you go through, you can enter these questions on the panel. Go to webinar panel on your desktop, enter the questions as we go through. We'll endeavour to answer them at the end within the 30 minutes. If we don't have time to answer them all, we'll do them by email. So fire off the questions as you go, and hopefully it will make it more of an interactive session both for us and for you. If you have any technical issues, do the same thing, enter a question into the panel, and one of our team will help you. So strange times, we're all working at home, right? I've never worked at home for so many days in a straight line in my life. But luckily we're getting support because the whole family is working at home. The kids are being schooled from remotely, and even the cat's working at home now, so we're not wanting to be left out. He's a bit confused about the number of people around all day. But when you look at kind of the nature of economics, the nature of business, it's really bizarre. And if you'd taken a bet on this 3 months ago, people would have laughed at you and said, what's the chance in April 2020 that toilet tissue is more valuable than oil? And people just laughed at you. And the fact of the matter is, last week, oil, future contracts on oil went below 0, and they're going to do the same in May, because for all the obvious reasons, lack of demand, oversupply, the storage space itself is worth more than the oil. Isn't that stunning? Would you ever believe that? We've lived through a life of oil being an average of $80 a barrel, getting to 120, 130 at peak times, crisis times, and down to 40, but never to below 0. So if you thought this was just another crisis, it's certainly a different kind of thing. And it's kind of amusing. I mean, it's easy to think that maybe sort of business is shutting down somehow, but some businesses are doing surprisingly well. Every business is challenged, and some businesses are certainly struggling, certainly in the retail sector, or the bricks and mortar retail. But this is kind of an interesting thing just to see. This is some statistics about the most popular online commerce search items during March. And then if you were in the business of manufacturing and selling dumbbells for your own personal gym, that would have been the number one. And apparently now, if you want to get dumbbells to work out at home, you can't get them for love or money. So you look at the thing, and then of course the B-Day, number 4, kind of, it's funny. Obviously, people are taking it seriously. You might not be able to get toilet tissue, so they're looking at the alternatives. And then you're thinking about the opportunities that working from home gives. You can see external monitors and the mouse for a laptop, external mouse. These are things people are working at home and thinking, I need my office stuff, I need what I have at an office. People are buying better desks, better chairs. The Amazon never had it so good. But it's kind of interesting just to see the kind of things that are happening. Makers of chocolate doing very well, where they can manufacture it. It's interesting. And looking at it from another perspective, I guess we've all been on those time management courses where they tell you, look at your diary for last week and make a list of all the things that you did, all the meetings you had, and all the emails you sent, and all the rest of it, and put them in one of these 4 quadrants, whether it's urgent or not urgent, important and not important. And urgency is usually dictated by a third party, somebody else. The importance is the kind of the criticality in terms of achievement of your objectives. And of course, as you know, if you've been through this, when you put them all in, they tell you to put them in the boxes and they're splattered all over the place. And we all tend to get dragged into urgent things. Sometimes we tend to do things we shouldn't be doing in the not important and not urgent box. But what's interesting is when we get into these crisis times, because of all the business continuity activities and everything else, a lot of our effort focuses in the top left-hand box, which is urgent and important. Got to do this, it's really important, got to keep everything moving. But of course, we know that we're most effective in important but not urgent. We should be spending more time planning and balance what we're actually executing with that. Now, this probably is an opportunity for this 30 minutes to be part of that important but not urgent. But it's worth thinking about how these times are changing our kind of attitudes and changing how we operate, how we work. Certainly from my perspective, I'm working more hours than ever. The days and the weeks fly by. I'm not convinced I'm any more effective, but I'm certainly producing more output, which is an interesting point. Now, the other thing that's relevant to all these, to all times, but this has become popular in the past year or two. But the research was done 20 years ago by Dunning and Kruger. And it's really, really interesting. It's kind of amusing at first, and then it's thought-provoking. But this applies to everything in life, whether you're learning to swim, learning to play the guitar, trying to, initiate a new accounts receivable initiative, working on a process improvement initiative. It is common, Dunning and Kruger said, that intelligent people, when faced with a new problem, very quickly can assimilate the facts and form an opinion and make a decision with confidence very early on, based on very little experience. But as you dig in to that, you get more experience, you realize it's a bit more nuanced, not so black and white, devil's in the detail, and your level of confidence goes down significantly, and you say, actually, this is a lot harder than I thought. And as you drive through the experience, eventually you get up that curve to expertise. But when you become an expert, you're never as confident as you were when you were a naive, intelligent but naive person starting out. And that's kind of fascinating because it leads us to all these things about, what are the obvious implications? We're in a crisis, supply chain issues, there's customer issues. So obviously we should extend payment terms, for example. And you see the UK supermarket chain Morrison's very early on, they immediately did the opposite. They said for their small suppliers, they reduced payment terms to 0 to make sure their supply chain was kept confident and capable. So sometimes the obvious isn't always the right answer. And I think Mark and I have discussed this many times. The Dunning-Kruger effect applies to everything in business and everything in your own life. And the more you look at it, the more you study it, becomes quite thought-provoking, quite helpful to avoid making foolish mistakes. So We're in this crisis. Customer behavior is changing for sure. Whether your business is providing goods and services to consumers or to other businesses, it's not all one. It's not all one shade. It's not all one color. Not everybody's stopping. Some customers in some markets are accelerating. Some are holding off a bit. Some are stopping. But even in an individual business, the segmentation of your customers, different types of customers are doing different things. So, this is definitely happening. And that is also driving changes in internal priorities. So how we spend our time, where we focus. So I'm sure you're seeing this. A lot of internal communications. Right, our priorities now are, A, B, and C. So it's kind of interesting just to recognise that these priorities are typically being shifted because of the big change in customer behaviour and in supply chain issues, as well as the key issue of the physical challenges we have right now with social distancing. But as somebody once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So when crisis happens, it tends to galvanize our commitment to get things done in terms of priorities. So never let a good crisis go to waste. There's no better time than now to really work on the fitness of the organization, fitness of your teams. And when I say fitness, it's that definition, the quality of being suitable to fulfill a particular role or task. And that is characterized by qualities such as stamina, strength, agility, control, and speed. And if we can think about that in a business context, that's what we need to do in our businesses and in our teams, in our receivables teams, in order to cash, in all of our business processes, we need to bring that in. And on that point, I'd like to introduce Mark to talk exactly how to get some fitness into our credit and accounts receivable order to cash process. So Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. It's my pleasure to meet you all. I'm calling from the sunny Czech Republic. Just a quick introduction about the association. It was formed about 10 years ago by myself as founder, and was really established to as the only organization supporting the credit order to cash profession in all of Central and Eastern Europe. So all the way from Czech Republic right through all the countries right through to Russia. We provide training, coaching, consultancy, really just based on the 30 plus years that myself and my colleagues have been working in the credit and order to cash area, and largely the last 15 years in Central Europe, and a lot of that time in the shared service center area. A quick slide here. These are newspaper headlines from the previous recession, and I show this in a lot of presentations because I think we are already seeing, and we'll see more of these headlines again. And the one towards the top there where it says about credit, it means that our area should always be, but particularly now, will be front and center of every business's thoughts. The 5 things I'm going to cover this afternoon. First of all, is to be positive. The situation will pass, but also for those working in order to cash, whatever job you're doing, this is the moment to shine. Whether it's in invoicing or collections or dispute management or so on, every single part of our area is going to be very high profile now. So some other things that we're going to talk about shortly. It's a great opportunity, and I think probably essential, to look at the customer portfolios, look at all the accounts you've got, where there are disputes, to look at those, and I'll give a couple of hints and tips shortly how to deal with those, but also to really to lead, manage, and improve in the key areas of talent and technology. There's as I said earlier, there's a lot of opportunity, and perhaps try and use some of the extra time that you may have for some self-development. The time that perhaps we're not commuting or spending in meetings and so on, we can actually use some of that time right now. I suppose a personal example, I'm British and I've lived in the Czech Republic for 15 years. and I realize that I don't actually have an excuse not to learn the language more. So I'm taking lessons most days now. I'm at the point where I realize how difficult it actually is, but I'm hanging in there. Just going to change the next slide. Okay, so when we talk about order to cash, we talk about every component part of this this slide here. So risk, database management, invoicing, collections, cash allocation, reporting, and dispute management. They're all connected. When I was saying just now about looking at review processes or process reviews, if any organization is running these sections in silos, I think this is a good period of reflection to have them all aligned together. And as we say here, we always recommend that there shouldn't be any more than 2.5% overdue. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are probably saying, well, that's just not possible, but that's what we should be striving towards, and that's what the whole culture and organization of an organization should be, so that the vast majority of invoices are paid more or less on time. And the main reason for that is, as we're seeing now, that you never really know when a black swan is going to happen. It could be one company, one major customer that gets into trouble or goes out of business, and we've seen many big name customers fail, big name companies fail in recent times. Or it could be this rapid crisis that we're seeing now, and there's more to come. Whilst I say be positive, there are many positives to be gained, but there are more challenges to come, because for probably the most people that are trading in Europe, Brexit is still to happen, and the administrative implications, never mind the political side, are going to be huge. So that's still to come on top of the immediate problems that we're facing right now. So just to consider, look at all these as opportunities. Spend a lot of time looking at the customer portfolio. I say this because through a lot of the experience I have in coaching and training and so on, because a lot of this is now all on PCs, and a lot of companies have sort of tried to have as little paper printed as possible. A lot of the minutiae, a lot of the information that's within the customer's portfolio is overlooked. So you'll find when you actually do take time to look at what's in the portfolio, there'll be lots of unmatched credits and debits, a lot of duplicated accounts, even across country and business unit. It will be found that your company is trading with another company in 4, 5, or 6 different countries, and these this is largely why shared service centers came into being, so that a lot of these things can be standardized, so they can become key accounts rather than one or several small accounts, which is and there's a good possibility that these payments will be made by one shared service center somewhere else in Central Europe as well. Matching debits and credits, so unallocated cash, invoices, and also just being very kind of practical and ruthless. If you know your profit margins, a lot of invoices that are very late. So if you have a fairly small profit margin, you've got invoices that are 3 or more months overdue, then the actual real profit is largely gone. So when you're looking at prioritizing what you're doing, you have to ask the question, is there real value in spending time on these particular smaller invoices or small accounts? Again, I say here, tidy up the customer master file. A lot of invoice disputes come about because there are accounts are duplicated, so the same account is set up more than once, and that's the root cause of a lot of pricing problems, is that they're not going through the account that has the latest agreed price file. As I've been talking to a lot of people over the last 6 weeks or so, they've kind of gone into a sort of sort of one mode, saying like we can only concentrate on what's happening right now. To some degree, I think some companies are going through like a crisis management, but I think we still have to look forward. And it's an opportunity now to request RFIs, requests for information, particularly with technology service providers, and particularly in the areas of collections and cash and electronic invoicing. I think this is one area where if invoices are still being produced manually, I think the realization that that's something that really shouldn't happen anymore. And this situation has brought that very much to a head. I know a lot of these technology service providers will be very happy to assist, one, with preparing the business case, and also they can deploy very rapidly if you want to have this, if you want these implemented, even in a light form, quite quickly. But alongside the technology side, it's also important that the people working in this area are also completely au fait with what the technology is going to do. If you're looking for a lot of fast dashboards and data, you still need to have people that actually can really understand and analyze and react to that data. Another thing I would recommend right now is to work with a reputable third-party debt collection agency, again, where you have a lot of perhaps a high volume of low-value overdues. It's not a failure. It's not a sign of failure. It's a working practice that I believe all companies really should engage with. We never really have enough people to work all our accounts, so submitting some to a third party is a necessity. And also, if it's a question of what could potentially be written off, or even if the commission rate from a third party agency is 20%, I'd rather collect 80% of something rather than 100% of nothing. Likewise with credit rating agencies. Now, this isn't so much this is in part to get real-time credit information, although most agencies, a lot of the information is still lagging based on year-end reports and so on. But going back to the customer master file, I think a good credit rating agency will also be able to help with analyzing all your database and bringing together parent-child relationships, so you can have a whole group where you're trading with different companies that have different names, but are actually all part of the one big parent. So this is another way to look at the risk, and also to synergize your staff so they can be most effective. And I think that to summarize pretty well all of it is the exciting thing about shared services is we are surrounded by big data, and the key to maximizing the recommendations I've been talking about here is to look at the whole picture, every single company and every single country that's under the shared service center roof. So whether that's 10 countries and 5 business units, produce the data in such a way that you can look at the whole thing, treat it as one entity and not several different ones, because the practices and the recommendations and the solutions are the same for pretty well for every country. Maybe some local regulations, but essentially they're the same. So just to wrap up then, there's a great opportunity to make a difference to the company and the community. Everybody working in the order to cash area are actually guardians of the largest current asset your company has, the trade receivables. It's the key component of working capital and the gateway to maximizing profit. So ultimate one for myself, it's really all about measuring and monitoring. And there's this old expression here that stands the test of time. If you don't measure, you can't control. If you don't control, you can't manage. And if you don't manage, you can't improve. So it's just going back to what I've been saying in the last few minutes. And finally, just back to the self-development piece, I read something recently that apparently we spend more than 2 hours every day on social media. And on top of that, Netflix and whatever else on television. So I think it's let's try and use some of this time, say, for some self-development to add some extra skills that will stand us in good stead for when in the workplace today and when we return to happier times in the not too distant future. So that's more or less it from myself. I'll be happy to take questions and as Dan said, to respond offline after the webinar. So thanks again, Dan, and I'll hand back to yourself, sir.
Thank you very much, Mark. There's some great reminders of good practice that sometimes we don't always subscribe to, and some insights as well. So thank you very much for that. Just before I run into the close, I know a lot of you are asking for copies of the slides. You can certainly have those, but now's the time to ask any other questions you have. We hope to be able to answer those at the end of this, or if not, by voice, by email. So ask any questions. It's a good time. So Mark gave us great 5 keys, absolutely, critical things to remember. So just remember those things and apply them every day, and we'll be in better shape than we were yesterday. I mean, it's very easy as we think about all of our business. In business in general, we have a habit of saying, let's look back at what we did last month, last quarter, last year, and let's do more of that. Now, that's not always a great strategy for success, but at the times we're in now, that is definitely not a great strategy for success. So it is the time to be fitter as an organization, to take those lessons that Mark has shared. In volatile times, we need to be looking at what happened yesterday, what happened last week, and what's going to happen tomorrow. So we're going to be much more on it. We need better, faster information and analysis. We've got to be able to make those decisions on that stuff. And, if any of us are under the illusion that, when the lockdown eases, everything will be back to the way it was, as Mark intimated, there's going to be a mother of all recessions out of the back of this. So we're not going to be through this for quite some time. For the next couple of years, we've got to remember it's going to be stormy seas, and we've got to apply our best practice and our brains and personalities to best effect. So just bear that in mind. I think one thing I really like about business is actually there are no silver bullets, there are no quick fixes. And this is a lovely quote from Atul Gawande. He wrote this about, he's a surgeon, wrote this about best practices in surgery. But it's true in all aspects of life, and it's true in receivables, in credit, in purchase to pay, in general management. We always hope there's something about us that wants some kind of easy fix, to do the one master stroke that will fix everything. It just doesn't work that way. It's requiring us to do 100 small steps going right, one after the other, no slip-ups, no goofs, and everyone pitching in. And that is really important for us to remember. And as leaders, we've got to make sure that our teams understand that. And that is really all about execution. That is the art of execution. There is a great saying that no plan survives first contact with reality. And that is very, very true. Execution, and the secret, this is Mark Twain, I think, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. And that is very, very true. We've got to get on and get stuff done. And it's about working through our people, working through the organization. And just coming back to that Dunning-Kruger curve we talked about earlier, that kind of the early ill-informed confidence. Execution is about making the best of the second half of that curve, getting deep into experience, learning the realities, and driving through to an appropriate confidence based on the information we have. So that's kind of a summary of bringing to a close of what we've discussed. This is what we've talked through. Now we have time for one question, maybe. Let's see what we have here. Right. Okay. Okay, Mark, quick one for you. This is easy. So we've got, do you have any recommendations for third-party collections agencies with global scope? Many are regional. So that's an interesting point. Have you got any thoughts about that, or do you want to think about that?
Do you want to quote a name? Yeah, no.
We're amongst friends.
A global scale, Atradius Collections.
Atradius. Okay, there's one. Yeah. There's a good one for you.
I can connect you.
Yeah, and if you have keep asking your questions. I'm going to give you one more, and then we're going to have to close. But the 2.5%, making sure that no more than 2.5% is past due. What is that benchmark based on? Is it considered an aspirational target for most companies?
It's simplistically, the culture and the focus of every company should be that all invoices are paid on time. And maybe a slightly controversial statement, but any invoices that are paid late it can be argued, are always down to failures within the selling company. If anybody can have an opportunity not to pay, whether it's a dispute or just not being, the terms and conditions are not implied or explained properly at the beginning, the collection teams are not effective, or the collection processes, then you will have overdues. It's very much like, like water, if you like. It'll go where the weakest points are.
That's a good point, Mark. And I think whether you're on the receivable side or the payable side, payment on time is actually a basic, I was going to say basic human right, but it's a business right. Whatever terms you agree, you should be paid to those terms. And yes. I think we should operate and we should plan accordingly. Well, thank you very much, Mark. You've given us a lot to think about. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I said we keep it to 30 minutes. We're at 31 minutes, so I've eaten into a minute that you didn't have. But if you've got any further questions, drop either myself or Mark an email. Our email addresses are there. Many of you asked for the materials. We'll send that to you. Any other questions we'll respond to by email. But have a great rest of your day, good evening, and the next few days and weeks in isolation, but hopefully for some of you, progressively less isolation. Thanks very much indeed. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.